Good afternoon, collectors and friends. Welcome to our 71st episode of Trading Card Therapy. I'm your host, the Dr. Leighton Sheldon. I'm the owner of JustCollect.com and the co-owner of VintageBreaks.com. So we are fresh off of the 44th National Sports Collectors Convention. I have exhibited every single one since the Atlanta National, meaning the last time it was held in Atlanta, and I think that was 98-ish, maybe 99. For a few years before that, I even attended them before I exhibited. So I've been going for a long time. And the one that just happened might just be the very best national yet. Please join me today as I talk all about some of the things that I personally experienced at the National. And I'm curious, if you're watching this and you went to the National, what did you experience? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there something I completely left out that you would love to let the community know in case they ever go to a future National Sports Collectors Convention, which, by the way, next year's 45th National is going to be where everyone's generally favorite location for the National is, which is just outside of Chicago at the Rosemont Convention Center, very close to the Chicago airport. And of course, almost all the hotels are right across the street within walking distance. And for that reason, if not nothing else, people love the location when it is held at the Rosemont Convention Center. So this particular convention in Cleveland, I know that there was some folks, I felt like I heard chatter, I'm curious if you heard it as well, that thought maybe Cleveland's not going to be any good because it's in Cleveland. Not as many people want to go there as they do Chicago. The market's kind of come off its high a few years ago, meaning during the COVID boom, and yada, yada, yada. So I'm going to let you know about some of the things that transpired at the National. Because I think as a collector, if you're tuning into my podcast, Trading Card Therapy, and especially if you weren't there, you probably want to know. And if you were there, like I said, I'd love to know if you agree with some of the things I'm discussing with everybody. And if I've missed anything at all, please let me know in the comments. Where I have chosen to start, and it's not negative, meaning some of the things I'll be talking about were, whether it be annoying or frustrating or whatever the case is, but you're going to see where I'm coming from, is that these problems, these issues that I personally experienced firsthand last week at the National was really in large part due to the tremendous response and how busy the National actually was. So keep in mind, if the National wasn't busy, there probably wouldn't have been long lines for the bathroom. If the National wasn't busy, there probably wouldn't have been long lines for food. If the National wasn't busy, the internet probably would have worked a little bit better. It did work really well, by the way, on Tuesday during dealer setup. If the National wasn't busy, there probably wouldn't have been as much physical car traffic coming into the facility. Apparently, there were only two ways to come in and out, and actually one physical entrance, and that caused some problems for a number of different folks. But the reason I'm posing it the way that I am is because instead of focusing on, at least in my opinion, what was wrong or what it could have been handled better, I thought about it after hearing a number of people talk about the National, post-National, on YouTube, of course, or on IG, with a number of things maybe I've already pointed out. But to me, I would so much rather have those problems and issues than not have any of them at all, or only have some of them, because it's just not that busy. And by the way, if it's not that busy, all of a sudden, the week drags on, and it's really long. And to me, the week felt like it went really fast. Did you feel like that? If you went to the National, whether it be as an exhibitor, whether it be as a patron, did you, I guess, loathe getting up every morning, knowing there was going to be traffic, knowing that the meals might be challenging at the show itself, or that the lines to the bathroom might be long? I just figured out a way to deal with it, and so did my teammates, meaning on my team for Just Collecting Vintage Breaks that were there. And I think a lot of people did similarly at the National, but I'd love to hear what you did. Something else that I felt as a dealer, and I'm curious if you're a dealer, did you experience similar? Or if you were a collector, did you get the sense that dealers were buying a lot from you? Because for me, sales were very brisk. In fact, very proud to say that for Just Collect, we set our record for sales at a National Sports Collectors Convention this year at the Cleveland National. So, once again, you had the consequences that happened because of all the traffic that we just covered. But I think one of the bumps that we got, one of the good things was that I believe it wasn't just for us at Just Collect, but I believe many of the vendors, the dealers, the exhibitors at the convention thought that they did really well with their sales. The sales were brisk, the sales were strong. And to be fair, maybe some were focusing more on new customers, others were just focusing on dollars of sales. And I would say for us, it was really a combination because we're able to meet the community for one of the very few times all year. We don't do that many conventions. And of course, you do want to sell, a large amount of dollars of stuff if you go there with a lot of things to sell. So for me, it lived up to the expectations as far as the sales being brisk. And I'm curious, if you were just a patron and you had some cars to sell, do you felt like you experienced that, meaning dealers were really eager to buy your inventory? Because, we bought a lot at the booth. I bought a fair amount on the floor. And I just felt like, the wheel was moving. Everyone kind of figured out where they were in the wheel, and they were happy to partake because, once again, you were there on the floor and you had to feel that energy. I felt it. I couldn't be the only one. I'm not talking about the energy of kids yelling at the eBay booth or the manufacturer like Topps, Rubber Deck. I think, by the way, all that's great. It doesn't, bother me the way it may bother some others because they're there to do it. I have so much gratitude that the hobby is in such a different place than it was when I graduated college in 2000 from Rutgers College, from the School of Business with a degree in management. I just hope to hold on really to any hobby-related job I could get, and certainly didn't realize where I would be almost 25 years later. And I'm very, very thankful for it. And I think that in large part, it comes to the industry just growing by leaps and bounds over the last 25 years. And of course, we work very hard here and love what we do. So one of the other things I wanted to point out, and I believe others felt the same way, that I met at Cleveland, but for those that didn't go, the show in terms of the layout was either a very big rectangle, maybe a little bit more squarish, I'm not sure, but I found with the different ways and the alleys and the ins and outs of Chicago that the layout in Cleveland was a little bit more advantageous. But I think it's more advantageous for us as a dealer, but also as a patron, as a customer, as someone just going there to walk around, even get freebies. When you're not sure exactly where the nearest bathroom is, or when you're not sure exactly where that item is you saw, and even though you wrote down booth 1708, you don't exactly know where booth or the row 1700 is, it makes it a little bit less fun. So I think when the room layout is just a little bit easier for everyone to utilize, I think more commerce happens. I think more fun happens by young and old, and of course, everyone in between. And in general, just makes for a more pleasurable experience. Have you ever been to, whether it be the National or another big convention, and you've seen something, you've laid your eyes on something that is just so amazing, but for one reason or another, you're not able to buy it? Well, that happened to me twice at this year's 44th National Sports Collectors Convention. Let me explain. The first instance is a younger gentleman came up to the booth and he flat out says right away, I have a 1933 Gaudi set for sale. Certainly my ears perked up. My eyes, were very interested in seeing the cards. I said, did you bring him with you? Love to see it. He said, well, I brought just a couple of the highlights, but I brought, the biggie. And for most of us out there that are guessing what that might be, we would say either the Rus or the Garrix. But in this particular case, he let off, and he let off strong. If my editing guy is doing his job, he's now going to have on the screen what is a gorgeous ungraded, fresh to the marketplace, 1933 Gaudi Napoleon Lajoie. It was so short printed by the Gaudi company, it was never, ever issued in packs. In fact, the only way you could have got it is if you wrote to the Gaudi Gum Company and you let them know that you've acquired all 239 other cards, but you don't know where the 240th card is. They send out a very limited amount through the mail. And I don't know if this particular collector got it in this way or if he bought it or traded for it in the secondary market. But this collection has been in the family since literally the year of issue. So if you don't know much about the 1930s and the wartime of our country, the United States, there was these efforts to try to get folks to recycle paper because paper had a lot of uses during wartime. And so these cards, including this complete set of 1933 Gaudi, apparently were slated for recycling by this individual's mother. But at the last moment, this collector grabbed the boxes off of the heap and kept them for a very, very long time in his family. Such a long time, in fact, that the individual who showed it to me is a descendant of the collector who originally had these cards since the 1930s that helped them survive the great paper drives and recycling efforts of the wartime period. So when he showed it to me, I was, of course, flabbergasted. In terms of condition, it looks to be in a nice, call it VG-ish grade, obviously worth tens of thousands of dollars, not even counting the Babe Ruths, the Lou Gehrig's, or the 230-something other cards in the set. But then I was dealt a blow. He said, I'm not interested in selling now, but he would like to get together with me after the convention and have me, on behalf of his family, do a full appraisal of the set and let him know what I think it's worth. And, of course, what we would pay for the set with the rare Lajoie. Now, make no mistake, we've all been there, where we're shown an item at a convention or at a friend's house who's a collector, and we just can't buy it. And it was hard for me to have that discipline of not just to keep asking him again and again. Just to be clear, sir, because I can make you an offer just on the nap right now. I was able to read the tea leaves. He didn't want to sell it right then. In fact, I think he would have been a little bit, maybe like his feathers would have been ruffled if I kept pushing. So just to be clear, there's nothing to guarantee that he won't sell it before we talk again. But I recently bought a huge collection of T206s, T205s, and some other amazing cards that included 26 fresh to the hobby T206 Hindu backs. And that individual, that collector, first contacted me just over 3 years ago. So we're able to exhibit some patience here at Just Collect. And I suggest to you out there, if you've ever come across something that is not quite buyable today, but you might have a chance to buy it in the future, as much as you think calling that person or texting that person or emailing that person or sending them free coffee every day or a dozen donuts might be the way to do it, I think that sometimes less is more. And this is one of those instances where I'll make sure we keep in touch. I have his information. And of course, I'll be touching base with him shortly after the National. But we will keep everyone posted about the progress of that 33 Gaudi complete set with the Nap Lajoie. If you want to read the full story, by the way, on the T206 epic find that we recently made here at Just Collect, you can do so on my blog at blog.justcollect.com. And if you're a collecting vintage guru and nerd like myself, then you may just appreciate some of the other amazing collections that we bought through the years. And we've documented many of them with either a blog and or a video. So if you're more of like someone who likes to read, check out the blog. We have hundreds of stories on these collections through the years. And if you're more of a video person, check out my YouTube channel, Just Collect, all one word. We have some really fun videos on there as well. There was also something else that, once again, this video I particularly chose to recap the National. I could tell you guys about all the wonderful things I bought. Well, guess what? I'm going to talk about some of them in next week's episode of Trading Card Therapy, our 72nd episode. Plus, I'll give you a reason to tune in. But for this week, I'm just going to mention something else that I saw at the National. And once again, have you ever seen something that you just wanted so badly you could taste it, but that the individual wouldn't sell it to you? Well, this one's a piece of memorabilia that we're talking about. And I appreciate that this individual asked me for some advice on a fresh to the hobby card collection that happened to be vintage. And then all of a sudden tells me the fascinating story of the item that, once again, if my editor is doing a good job, should now have on the screen. Is a rookie year 1984 Michael Jordan signed photo. Keep in mind, when this gentleman came to my booth at the National, I saw this fresh. It was not graded or authenticated. He asked me for some advice. But this is what's super cool. It's from the 9th game of his rookie year. You might ask, how does this collector even know that? Because he got it himself. So his family, his parents, so the story goes, was friends with the Bulls CEO. And he makes it a point to say the Bulls were not a very good team then. So he says the 9th game of the year, you can look this up, you can verify the facts, was Canon Photo Night. And you might ask, why is that even relevant? Canon was giving out 3 photographs that night. A photograph of the head coach, a photograph of then their best player, Orlando Woolridge, the Big O. Lastly, a photograph of what was an up-and-coming rookie from North Carolina, none other than Michael Jordan. Well, this individual explained to me, and that's why I'm sharing the story with you, because it's incredible. I'm getting goosebumps as I tell it, that during that 9th game, he went to the VIP area because his parents had access, and some of the players were there. And because it was Canon Photo Night, the coach, Orlando Woolridge, and Michael Jordan were there. And he said he walked right up to Michael. It wasn't a long line. Michael graciously signed pre-Upper Deck, pre-Gatorade, pre-Nike contracts, pre-everything MJ Mania, signs a photo during the prior to the 9th game of his NBA career. He played some preseason games, but official 9th game of his career. Of course, I'm in love. And I'm trying to give him the best information possible. And I do. I tell him what to do with PSA, that he should get it authenticated, show him your provenance. But if you ever wanted something so bad that you could taste it, and I could hear myself asking him more and more. I said, do you think you might sell this here? And I realized as the time was going on that he was likely not going to sell it. But he's let me know that if he ever does part with it, he would consider selling it to me first. Of course, you have to reach the deal and all that. But to me, sometimes the things that you don't buy make the experience that much more enjoyable and interesting over the items that you do buy. And that's why I chose to share that with you folks today, because I'm curious if you've ever been in that spot. Like you've gone to a big convention or you went to go do a deal with a buddy. And even though you didn't get it, or you might have even gotten jealous of a piece, you just walked away a little bit happier with a brighter smile because you're like, wow, there's just something super cool in the world that existed that I didn't even know existed before this very moment. So with that, I'm going to talk about something unrelated to the National, and then we'll circle back to the National for my last point of today. But I wanted to know, have you ever received an interesting or similar message on eBay about a card you're selling? So I'm purposely leaving off the seller's name, meaning his username. But I will say his name as we go through because he just says his first name, and that's fine. I'm curious, please listen closely, what you would do in this situation. He's writing me about a 1956 Topps, number 135, Mickey Mantle, PSA 6, that I currently have on eBay. Very well centered. And he says the following. By the way, high end for the grade. I mean, gorgeous example. Know what you would do here. Hi, great card. My wife, I would not buy any more cards until October 1st. I know that must sound funny, but we made a bet. So if you will consider holding this card for me until then, I will give you your price plus 100 over asking price. Send me an offer and then I will pay you. You have my word. My name is Daniel. Thanks. This was a head scratcher. Because, of course, if he's willing to pay full price, I'd sell the card. But here's where it gets a little more complicated. He doesn't want to pay for it for roughly, I think, 2 months. So all of August, all of September, and then October 1st. So for those of you that are not familiar with the way eBay works, if he executes the purchase, we have to show that we shipped the card. Plus, he's not going to pay for it. So the best thing that could happen is if he contacted us off of eBay. But the problem is if we tell him to do that through eBay, eBay will not like that. That's against the rules. They potentially could ding your account or even worse, suspend your account. So the problem is if we agree with him and we do it through eBay and he accepts, but he doesn't pay, well, then the fees will be charged by eBay. But yet we actually haven't even gotten any money yet for the card. So I don't really know how to handle this. And I'm curious, if you were willing to wait 2 months, how would you successfully sell this card to this individual? And if you weren't willing to wait the 2 months, how long would you wait? How long would you wait to sell a card that was approximately $6,000? Please let me know in the comments. But I've never received a message like that before. And really, I appreciate his candid nature because I think he's telling the truth. I think he made a bet with his wife. He recognizes it's a great card for the grade. He's not even haggling on any price. In fact, he's willing to pay $100 above. He just can't buy it now. And to be clear, if he walked into my store, I was saying this to J5, if he walked in locally and I could meet him in person, he gave me like a $100 deposit, $250 deposit, non-refundable, to show he was serious. Yeah, I would hold the card until October 1st. But on eBay, it presents a challenge. So how would you handle it? Would love to know. All right. The last thing I wanted to wrap up with here, and I'm sure I'm going to miss some people. So if I do, or I did miss you, I apologize. But I just wanted to give some shout outs here to some people that either met for a minute or for several at the National, and with no particular order in mind. Here we go. Shout out to my buddy Darren Ravel, who's not only a good friend, but he was set up next to us, and I always enjoy hearing some of the stories behind some of the amazing items, whether it be from DB Cooper all the way to Walt Disney and everything in between. Steve Hart, who was kind enough to do a quick interview with me. And if you are into Vintage Unopened, this is a must-see interview. Check it out. It is uploaded to my YouTube channel under Just Collect, all one word. Steve Hart's singles booth was also behind my Just Collect booth at the National, so that was kind of a neat treat. Another special shout out to Todd and his son Ryan. He's from our Vintage Breaks community. We had a ton of fun with them all week, and then they graciously hosted us along with a few others on Saturday night at Topgolf, where, of course, we smashed the heck out of a bunch of balls. And I'm curious out there, have you ever been to Topgolf before? Because I had never been. It was my first time, and it was a blast. Next up, another VBer, Daniel Lynch. Then I met Jason, who I bought some graded cards from. He was actually at a deal randomly before that I was on at some point, I guess, last year. It's actually a pretty sizable collection. So that was pretty cool. We spent, I think, $9,000 with him. Then another collector, Greg with 2 Gs, who follows Trading Card Therapy. We spent some money with him. And what was really cool is he's not selling any of his collection yet. These are just duplicates. You heard a prior episode of Trading Card Therapy and how I talked about fitting your own hoard of cards. In other words, if you have doubles or triplicates and you're really not doing much with it, whether it be you bring them to me, you consign them to an auction house, you bring them to a local convention, whatever the case is, you'll do a little bit more good with them than just having them kind of collecting dust, especially if it's not fitting a primary need in your collection. Rob T, Charles G from VB Midwest, Leon Lucky from Net54, Chris Sewell from Baseball Card Collector Investor Dealer, got a great YouTube channel. His buddy just started CAI Auctions, the Texas Snowman. I bought some really great cards from him. I think a 53 Topps Mantle and a 49 Bowman Jackie. Of course, our very own Monty, who's a tremendous trooper all week. Mike Mahan from the YouTube channel. Rick Probstein, Gary V, who is always just full of energy. Jace, and I'm sure there's many, many more. But really, the National was a blast. And the buying, selling, and trading wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for all of you that I mentioned. And of course, literally tens of thousands of people that I did not mention and that maybe I didn't even meet. But I sincerely hope to meet as many of you in the future at upcoming conventions. So we'll be setting up as Just Collect at the upcoming Fanatics Fest in New York City at the Javits Center. Very excited about that. We'll be set up at the Philly Show. You can check out all the details of that at thephillyshow.com. That's in September. And I'm traveling, I believe, in about 10 days or 12 days out of state for a very big collection, Fresh to the Hobby. Stay tuned for that and more on future episodes of Trading Card Therapy. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for tuning in today.